Maya Angelou, who was a professor, activist, and writer, turned 40 on April 4th, 1968. She had planned a big party in Harlem with many of the day's Black professional elites among the guests. But history had other ideas. Dr. King's assassination sent Angelou into weeks of depression. And it was fellow writer James Baldwin who helped move her out of that depression, helped her dig out of it. And she recalls his words and his assistance to her in her book called A Song Flung Up to Heaven. She writes about the importance of laughter and ancestral guidance to get her through those dark times. She writes, there was very little serious conversation. The times were so solemn and the daily news so somber that we snatched mirth from unlikely places and gave servings of it to one another with both hands. I told Jimmy I was so glad to laugh. He said, we survived slavery. You know how we survived? We put surviving into our poems and into our songs. We put it into our folk tales. We danced it in New Orleans and put it in our pots when we cooked pinto beans. We knew if we wanted to survive, we had better lift our own spirits. So we laughed whenever we got the chance. When I think about resilience, I often think about the African American or Black community. And my journey toward understanding that strength of soul began many years ago when I was a graduate student at Duke. And I took a class called African American Autobiography. Now, I hadn't read the description of the course as well as I should have. I thought we were going to be studying autobiographies by Black people. But instead, what it actually was it was a class for African Americans to learn how to write their own autobiographies. And I was the only white face in the room. But I was invited to stay. And it was one of the best courses I ever took at Duke. I heard many stories of resilience that semester, and I learned a lot about what it feels like to be in what some call Black space. I felt honored that the other students that were in that class felt comfortable enough to talk to me about what it feels like to be African American in a white world. And I passed the course by interviewing a Black woman about her experience and telling her story for the class. One of the most memorable experiences in that class was the day we were studying one of Maya Angelou's poems. And I asked this rather inane question that I don't remember what the question was. It was probably something that, something inane that would make me seem like a graduate student. But I asked this question, and instead of answering me, the professor pulled up her flip phone, because yes, we were using flip phones in those days. And she opened up her phone, she dialed a number, and she said, Maya, I've got a student who has a question here for you. And she handed me the phone. Now, like I said, I don't remember what the question was, but I do remember her response. Because Maya started with a big belly laugh. And then she said, Oh, honey, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. I don't have the answer for you. Because this is what we do. We take life for what it gives us, and we make our own way, and we make our own interpretations of what we experience. We take in what life gives us, and we make our own way. This is about as good a definition of resilience as I can put my finger on. Because the reality of life is that we don't ever just bounce back from bad things that happen to us, the failures, the betrayals, the losses that all of us experience and grieve. We can't ever go back in time and be the person that we were before that event happened. The parent who loses a child never bounces back. The young person who goes off to war, even if he or she returns, does not return as themselves, the selves they were when they left. The Black community in our nation will be forever affected by the institution of slavery. There is no bouncing back from these kinds of experiences. Bouncing back is a myth. There's only moving through, taking what life gives us, letting that become a part of us, and then finding healthy ways to integrate this into our new lives. One of the things I heard from the other students in that class at Duke is that they find people of privilege, white people like me, to often have a hard time being resilient because we expect things to go our way. We don't expect to have to make our own way. We just expect it to be there for us. And when we don't get our own way, we can become stuck in our own sense of victimhood. I know I do this. If I'm moving through something difficult in my life, I have this feeling that it shouldn't actually be happening to me. And then I think, but it's up to me to do this alone, to be the heroine of my own story, to put on my big girl pants so I can bounce back to what life was like before this happened. But there are things that happen to us that will leave moral injury, soul wounds, as some people have called this. Events will arise that cause us to recognize that the reality of our world does not coincide with the way we were taught the world was supposed to work. And as people of faith, I think it's important for us to build resilience, to move through those events in healthy ways. Because if we remain wounded, if we remain victims of our experiences, then those wounds will tend to inflict wounds on others until that pain is acknowledged and we try to heal ourselves. I think of the Buddha. Remember the story where he was walled off from all pain by his parents? He stayed within the gates of the palace. And then one day, as a young man, he sees suffering in the streets of his kingdom. And his fantasy of the world comes crashing down. A soul wound so deep that he sat for 49 days until he understood a path that would allow him to be resilient in the face of what he now knew to be true about it, what it is to be human. He could have simply tried to bounce back to his own old self, but the story is richer for those 49 days of sadness. We are all richer for his decision to move through his pain toward a love that was expansive but difficult to achieve. How do we build resilience? This past fall, I thought I experienced a knee injury because I rode my bike on a long bike trip and then the next day couldn't walk, and found that it lasted for several days. And so I went to a sports medicine doctor thinking that they would just fix up whatever that injury was and I would, bounce back to normal. And he took some x-rays and he said, nope, what you have is arthritis. And there's no fixing arthritis. Unless you want a knee replacement, there's no fixing arthritis. But what we can do is send you to a physical therapist who will show you some simple exercises to build the muscle around that arthritic knee to hold it in place. Now, those exercises she gave me over 6 months were very, very simple. But over 6 months, the pain went away because I found a way to hold that bad knee in the correct position. And I see our resilience as being similar to this. When we have those soul wounds, we can build the emotional muscle around those wounds. The wound's not going to go away, but we can build emotional muscle around those wounds to hold it in place. What are some of those emotional muscle pieces that we can do? They're very simple, just like my PT exercises. Getting enough sleep at night. Getting some exercise every day. Drinking enough water. Making sure you're getting your vegetables. Creating some order in your home, whether it's cleaning out your refrigerator or a drawer. Taking a day off every week, especially from the internet and the news. And last but not least, finding something to laugh about every day. More than 15 times a day. Let's try 50 times a day. Let's try laughing 50 times a day to build that emotional muscle that makes us resilient in the face of so much bad news that is around us. These might seem like small things, but I would guess that there are those among you who have felt a soul wound so deep that at the time all you could do was to keep waking up and breathing in and out. Drinking water, eating a little bit of food, and then in time, maybe your emotional muscles were strong enough to laugh a little bit, to take a short walk. I remember, in particular, an episode in my life when I was in my early 20s. I was suffering some pain behind my left eye and went to see the doctor, and they did lots and lots of tests and then came back to me with the news that I had multiple sclerosis. Now, this was not how my life was supposed to turn out. I was advised by my neurologist to change my career path I was on track to start medical school that fall. I was advised not to have children, not to spend any time in the sun, not to exercise to the point of perspiring, to give up horseback riding because my balance would be severely compromised, and finally, that if I were lucky, if I took good care of myself, I could expect to live to the age of 60. Now, this was almost 50 years ago, and obviously this has not been my story. Better treatment, a lot of luck, and grace have all had a role in my life, but one of the blessings of having a chronic illness is learning that you do need to build those muscles around that wound. That I have to pay attention to how I'm feeling on a daily basis, how hard I can push myself, and when I need to give up pushing, what I need to do to maintain my resiliency. I learned I was not going to bounce back, but I could move through with care. Part of my practice has been to write in my journal every day, every morning, about what was life-giving the day before and what drained my energy and how I might need to tweak how I'm spending my time. And I recommend this to all of you, a daily examine about where you are in your life, how you feel, what brings you joy, and what feels really taxing, and how you might try to, change the dynamics of how you spend your days. We can all become our own healers. And if you feel the need to build your resilience muscles, what practices can you put in place right now that will help? Singing, dancing, laughing, taking good care of yourself. What have you let slide? What do you need to start doing again to build your own resiliency muscles? And we can also be one another's healers as well, because resilience is never a solo act. As Amy Van Alstel wrote once, sometimes a band or a choir, music requires, sometimes in a band or a choir, music requires players or singers to hold a note longer that actually can hold a note. So we stagger when we take a breath, so the sound appears uninterrupted. Some of you in the choir, have you ever done this? Yeah. You stagger your breath so the sound appears uninterrupted. Everyone gets to breathe, and the music stays strong and vibrant. And this is the way it is with our individual lives, too. There will be those times when you need to take a breath, and you can count on your community to keep the song strong for you in that instance. So let's put survival into our songs, our poems, our stories. Let's do more dancing. Let's lift our spirits with and for one another, and let's laugh every chance we get. Our world is so interconnected, my friends, that when we become more resilient and tender-hearted ourselves, our community will become that, our planet will become that, our universe will become that in ways that we cannot even begin to understand. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Ashe.